This episode is brought to you by Black Star Brands. A bit cold, but a fantastic day for flying. We're here at Damyns Hall in Essex, home of the Tiger Club. Welcome to the Aviators Lounge. Well, that's the way to arrive. After a quick warm-up in the clubhouse, I met up with Richard Brinklow, chairman of the Tiger Club, pilot extraordinaire Pete Kynsey, and my old mucker, Tony Dyer. Pete Kynsey is one of the most respected pilots on the airshow scene. Both me and Tony were keen to talk to him.
Pete, you are a qualified engineer, you're an airline pilot, an instructor, a warbird pilot. I'm probably missing a few things out here. A glider pilot, you are the chief pilot for the fighter collection and for air leasing.
Air leasing,
at Sywell.
And we run a seaplane training school as well.
At the seaplane training
in
school?
our spare time.
Have you got any spare time?
Not a lot.
It sounds remarkable. So where did your aviation career begin? Where does this all start?
Well, I started gliding at the age of 16 from the Long Mynd in Shropshire.
Right.
And because I'd always wanted to fly. And what I really wanted to do was aerobatics. I didn't really want to go into a commercial flying career, but I did end up there. I knew at school of a chap called Neil Williams, who was a British aerobatic champion, and for some inexplicable reason, at the age of about 13 or 14, I decided I wanted to beat him one day, which for a poor boy from Liverpool was a pretty ambitious aim. And the only thing that got me close to that, in fact, was the Tiger Club, because eventually I got a job at Redhill, which is where the club was based in the 1970s, and the Tiger Club was based there. So I immediately joined the Tiger Club, having been told by Bristow's I was not to touch an aeroplane for the entire year because I was learning to fly helicopters and I might get confused between the two. In fact, that year I did more flying in the Tiger Club than I did in helicopters, but I kept that one quiet. And the Tiger Club gave me the opportunity, gave a lot of other people, which is to get involved in the fun side of sport aviation and to get into competition aerobatics. And I didn't get close to beating Neil Williams, but I did meet him and I almost competed against him, so I got close.
That's quite something. Well, I see you've got over 25,000 hours.
Yes, that's the product of being an airline pilot.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. A few of those are reading a newspaper. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. No.
So how many types have you got?
I don't count them, but upwards of 250, 300 maybe, I don't know.
It's impressive. It's So what inspired you to actually get into aviation?
Well, in fact, it was the headmaster of our school used to umpire our cricket matches. And we lived at a place called Wallasey, and there was a VOR at Wallasey, so it was the junction of three airways. So we'd be playing cricket, and you'd suddenly hear this rumbling of a radial engine. You'd say, "Stop play!" And then you suddenly look up the sky and say, "Lockheed Constellation, play!" And off we go again. So by the age of about 13, I could identify every aeroplane that flew over.
Wow.
And that's where it all began. Because I had no family involvement in this at all.
No. Oh, that's brilliant. I've got to ask you, you've obviously flown so many aircraft, and you do rotary as well and the gliders. So what would be your favourite aircraft?
It's very tricky. And most people think I'm going to say one of the high-performance aeroplanes, but in actual fact, it's my little racing aeroplane, the Cosmic Wind.
Oh, yes.
Which has got a stupidly small engine, same size as the Cubs outside, 100 horsepower. But you can dive it to 300 miles an hour. It's got the most astonishing handling characteristics. Neil Williams used to fly it and do amazing air displays in it in the 60s. And it's just a delight to fly.
Yeah, I must admit, I love watching you fly it. It's a lovely little aircraft. It looks almost too small, if that's a...
People wonder how you get in it, but in actual fact, it's quite roomy. It's a bit like the TARDIS. Once you're inside, you've got all this room. Yeah. So much so that in the days when you could only import, I think it was 13 bottles of red wine from France before the customs man felt your shoulder. Yes. I managed to get all 13 inside that aeroplane and me every time I came back from France. So it's beginning, you think.
Oh, that's smashing. So is there any aircraft that you'd still like to fly?
I got to the point where I thought, not really, and then suddenly someone showed me a picture of a mosquito, and I thought, why did I forget that one? So yes, there is one on the list.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
who
good.
knows?
Well, I hope you get the chance to do that.
Me
There's
too.
More and more of them around now.
There are a few.
Great.
It might happen in the next few years.
Yeah. That would be great if we got one back in this country.
It would.
It would be
Sad not to see one here.
So you went into, you sort of ended up rotary and then into that sort of commercial world.
Yeah.
What was the jump into warbirds? How did you kind of get into warbird flying?
Well, I had two parallel careers. One was the commercial side, the sensible side, and the other was the fun side, which was initially doing competition aerobatics and going to the World Championships and that kind of thing. That led inevitably into air display flying, largely to help fund my aeroplane. And that then led into the warbird world, because in the 80s, there were increasing numbers of warbirds in the country. Stephen Gray he doubled his fleet size in 1 year, and he needed to find pilots somewhere. So they tended to choose them from the existing airshow pilots who are flying maybe Pitt Specials or Harvards and other similar airplanes. So that's how I got into it.
Smashing. But I must admit, one of the aircraft that I have really enjoyed watching and used to fly it a lot was the Tiger Cat.
It was my favourite aeroplane until it went back to California.
A lot of people got upset when that
Yes,
happened.
that's
It
right.
was so awesome to actually see
It was just ridiculous to be sitting there looking at two DC-6 engines halfway around a loop. I mean, who would ever think that would happen?
Yeah. I love some of the close formation work that you did as well, because did you do a pairing with the P-39?
No, it was with a Bearcat and Carl Schofield. Yes. And we used to do a pairs routine. And you could do it either way around. We started leading with the Tiger and the Bearcat would follow. And then one day we thought, well, just do it the other way around. And that was even more bizarre to see from the ground, I think. This monstrous airplane following this tiny little thing.
And obviously the other thing that you do, which is impressive, and we at Aviators Lounge, we try and talk a bit about some of the stuff that happens behind the scenes. Now, you do a lot of the choreographing for the Flying Legends show, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I've written the flying program for that for about the last 19, 20 years, I think. Yeah.
And
it's an unusual air show, as you know, if you've been to it. The idea of it, the whole principle of it is, this is an air show that doesn't stop. Most air shows, you watch something and then sooner or later there'll be a 5-minute pause and you think, well, what now? And there's nothing happening. Well, if that happens, I get the sack. So the whole principle of the flying program is it doesn't stop.
Well, I've been lucky to watch a lot of Flying Legends, and I watch from normally the end near Arco, and the thing that amazes me is some of the Spitfire starts. You know, when the show is started by the Spitfire, and you've got basically Spitfires over you all the time, and it's so impressive that you manage to choreograph it to get them in the right place at the right time, so there's always something happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So how long does it take? How long before the show are you actually looking into that and say the Balbo?
Well, I start thinking about the air show about 2 months ahead, but for the 2 weeks beforehand, it's just constantly in my mind. And I take a week, I'm in a hotel for a week beforehand and doing nothing other than writing the flying program and thinking about it and readjusting it, trying to make it so nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, because I think obviously with the Balbo, you've got all those dissimilar aircraft types as well, haven't you? So
it is partly dissimilar airplane types, but the main problem is the dissimilar pilots, because if you want to find 30 pilots who can do that, you've got to know them all well. You can't just bring a newcomer in. We've got to bring newcomers in, otherwise you have to bring up people so it'll carry on for years ahead. But you've got to know that pilot very well. So we always pick people we've seen flying and know very well. Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. If people haven't been to Flying Legends, that really is a show to go to. It really is. It's the best air show in the world. And I often say that to some American friends, and they go, it can't be. It's got to be Oshkosh. And you go, no, it's not Oshkosh. Oshkosh is good, but it's not Oshkosh.
So, talking about the pilots and getting sort of knowing those pilots well, knowing what is the route for somebody who's maybe got a bit of time on their hands and a bit of money to get into a warbird these days? What would you want to see?
Well, the qualifications we look for a display pilot, shall we say, not just someone to fly a Spitfire around the circuit, but to actually do display flying in them, is, first of all, an immense number of tailwheel flying hours, really. And flying the Tiger Club airplanes is just the perfect beginning. You want to get to the state where you think of a normal airplane as being one with a wheel on the back. Once you've got your mind in that category, then you're going in the right direction. And then you need to step up from these airplanes into something mid-weight, like a Harvard or something like that, maybe Yak 50s, that kind of thing. Then you need to have a display flying background displaying those airplanes, and you must be a good formation pilot as well, because you inevitably end up being thrown in a formation at some point. And then there's a step from those airplanes into the Spitfire category. But by that stage, tailwheel flying should be completely natural to you, and flying close to the ground doing aerobatics should be natural to you.
So to break that down a little bit with tailwheel flying, I'm thinking about people who might not really appreciate the difference between tailwheel and nose wheel flying. And of course, Tiger Club, like you said, brilliant place to come experience tail dragging. What's the main, like you say, you're at a different angle, is a different approch to flying?
Well, over the years, we've learned how to make airplanes easy to fly. They've all got nose wheels now, modern airplanes, and the skills required to take off and land in them are not that great. Old airplanes tend to have a tail wheel. The problem then is the view out of the airplane is rather poor. They have a natural tendency on the ground to be directionally unstable and disappear down the nearest ditch on the side of the runway. Often they have poor brakes because they're old designs and they haven't really got worked out brakes yet. So all these things are ganged up against you, and that's what you need to master.
That's great. So you do the tail wheel conversions and courses here, don't you, at the Tiger Club? Do you?
We do indeed.
Yeah.
We encourage anybody who wants to learn to fly what we regard as normal aircraft to come and join us and learn how to fly properly.
So you could start totally fresh, ab initio, right the way through.
Completely.
Wow.
One of our members finished her general flying test with Pete today in the Super Cup.
All right, excellent.
An ab initio right the way through.
Tell me about the Tiger Club. Where did it all start? Where did this all come from?
The general idea was to form a sport flying club that basically would do aerobatics, racing, and a certain amount of, albeit slow, touring with the basic Tiger Moths. And that was the basic principle of the club.
So did you start with the aircraft here then? Was this aircraft been with the club from that period?
From day one.
This aircraft did have some wartime service, didn't she?
Oh yes, she was with
Preston. So can we technically
number 9 ETS.
Can we say that she is a warbird?
I think that might be stretching it a bit.
I was going to say, like a Tiger Club, your warbird experience starts here. Pete, I'm thinking about a 13-year-old kid who goes to an air show and sees you flying around and sees this all going on and thinks, I might want to get into aviation. And maybe they've got a cricket master who wouldn't be a Lockheed Constellation. It'd be something much more boring. But what would you say to a youngster getting into aviation these days?
If they want to get involved in this kind of flying, which is the kind of sports side of flying, I think learning to fly on these kind of airplanes is the best beginning. The Piper Super Cub is an economical airplane, and it'll teach you all the skills you need, and you're on the right track then. And then really the path I took is the path many people have taken to then move into aerobatics and things like the Cap 10, that kind of airplane. Competition aerobatics kind of directs your aerobatics in a very good way and teaches you all the skills you need. And once you can do that, then you're on the right track.
Excellent. And Richard, joining the club here, what do we do? Go to the website?
Oh, indeed. Go to the website or come down and spend some time with us.
Well, as I say, we've had a fantastic day today, just being here and just soaking up the atmosphere. Sounds great.
This is a real one-off as an aerodrome.
And a great cafe as well.
Yes, a very good cafe.
Airfield with a good cafe.
Terry works very hard there.
Excellent.
Spitfire, the official movie t-shirt, available only from Black Star Brands. It was a real privilege to interview Pete and Richard. We also got the opportunity to catch up with some old friends and meet some new people.
Well, this is the place to be at a Christmas party by the bar, and I'm here with Ian from Spitfire Jim. Ian, hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. How's the summer been? We've seen each other at a couple of air shows.
We have, yes. People have been talking, haven't they? Yeah, it's been fantastic. It's been a really good year, and when we have done the air shows, we like to be with Black Star Brands, and we make a really nice group of businesses, really.
Now, I know it's a busy time of year for you, Christmas, but what are your plans beyond Christmas? Are you going into 2020? Big year, Battle of Britain?
It's a big year. We're actually launching a programme, so you'll get this first, but and it'd be nice to work with Aviators Lounge on this. But we're launching a project with Spitfire Heritage Trust called Nations of the Few. And we've written to the High Commissioners of each of the 16 nations who were represented in the Battle of Britain. And what we're going to do is we're raising funds via a digital book that people can sign with their memories. And in each international airport of each country, there'll be a full-size replica Spitfire hanging from the ceiling. And we'll also be having an exhibition on the ground telling the tale of each pilot and how they got to be representing their country in the Battle of Britain, because some of the stories are incredible, because a lot of it was just some young guy who just thought, I want to do this, and off he went.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. You have to keep us informed of what's going on with that. Great, excellent. So it is coming up to Christmas time, and I can recommend one of these Supermarine vodka, Spitfire gin. That if there's anyone watching from my family, that would look absolutely perfect in my stocking. Hi, we're here with Johnny Shaw and again Peter Frankowski, two friends of the show. Johnny, you're flying around the world next year. How is preparation and plans coming on for that?
Plans are going very well. We've got an ops team now, a designated ops team. We've been sorting out our overflight permits, the visas that I need, and basically just doing all the tedious parts behind the scenes so I can just get on flying, which is obviously the fun part. I've been carrying out a lot of outreach groups recently. Last week I was over at the Royal Aeronautical Society. We did a cool aeronautics thing there in front of about 95 children, showing them all about aerospace, aviation, and how STEM education can help them get into a role like that. But probably the most important part and the most exciting part for me over the last month has been that we've been given, through our partners ADS Group and Farnborough Air Show, a departure slot in the air show. So in front of 20,000 people on July the 24th next year, I'll be taking off in front of everybody that's there on the static display and starting my flight from there.
That sounds fantastic news. Now, Peter, I'm going to bring you in here because we were having a chat before. Now, we're talking about long-haul flights, and you were giving me some very interesting information. But let's take it back to 1931, is it?
Yeah,
and
1931.
Tell me about, so long before Johnny was born, the Polish pilot has set out...
Long before I was born, surprisingly enough.
So tell me about this then.
Okay, Poland was reborn as a country in 1918. Around 1920, there were the first attempts to build an aviation industry. We're talking about a country that had been gone from the map of Europe for over 100 years. And there was an industry created very quickly. And around 1930, there was talk about proving to the outside world that we had stuff we could export. The Warsaw Airplane Company, later known as PZL, they built an all-metal observation plane called the L2, which was not very good, but they wanted to show the outside world that it could do long distances, which was the thing that everybody was doing. Clem was doing around-the-world flights. Lots of Brits were flying to Australia, which obviously, or to India, parts of the British Empire. And so a Polish Air Force captain, Stanisław Skarżyński, suggested that they fly not across Africa to South Africa like all the Brits were doing, but around the circumference of Africa. Oh, wow. So, but they had to get to Africa first. The flight around Africa itself, they had to avoid South Africa because there was some unrest there. Was 25,000 kilometers. But including the flights in and out of Poland, they actually did over 32,000 kilometers. He was accompanied by an engineer from the factory, Mr. Markiewicz, and that was it. There was no support aircraft. Dead reckoning, watches, and magnetic compasses, and nothing else. And obviously most of Africa was unmapped. And they still did it and returned to Warsaw in the same plane. And the plane with the registration Sierra Papa Alpha Foxtrot Alpha actually continued to be used in civilian aviation after it came back.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
There you go, Johnny. No maps.
No maps. Dead reckoning.
They're dead reckoning. Yeah, you've got it easy, I reckon.
Yeah, I think I've probably got it a lot easier than those guys did. So yeah.
And you got a
crossed.
radio.
And I got a radio as well. Yeah.
The same guy in 33, which we might talk about at some other time, he flew across the Atlantic in a little RWD-5 plane. He flew from Dakar in Senegal to Brazil. It took him 25 hours, single-handed, no nav aids, no radio, no dinghy. He flew wearing his suit and hat like he always flew. And
Sorry, Johnny, are you going in suit?
I might have to amend the flight suit and just maybe get myself a suit and a nice little trilby or something like that. I think
that would be very cool because his 1933 record of flying that very light aircraft across the Atlantic remains unbeaten. Nobody has done it in a plane that was under 500 kilos.
Well, there's a challenge for you, Johnny, for the future. Right, Johnny, best of luck for the future. Peter, it's been great to see you again. Both of you, happy Christmas.
Christmas to you and the family.
And Happy New Year. Excellent. Thanks. Hi, I'm here with Deepak from the London Air Sports Centre, and we've got Rebecca, who's one of your students. Deepak, I've been here today and we've seen some of your aircraft outside. Tell me a bit about your business and what you do here at Damyns Hall.
My day job is teaching people to fly on modern light sports aircraft, which is what you've seen today. And the unique selling point that I have is teaching people to fly as we tour Europe and UK.
That sounds very interesting because, of course, I think of learning to fly. Yeah, you sort of go to a flying club every now and then, do a flying lesson every now and then, but this is completely different, isn't it?
It is. Generally, most flying schools will have a first international foreign flight across the channel to La Touquet. Rebecca's first international flight was to Slovenia.
Oh, to Slovenia. That sounds very interesting. So, Rebecca, when does your aviation career start? What inspired you to come and learn to fly?
Oh, my grandparents actually. So both my grandmother and my grandfather were pilots, and my grandmother in the 1970s used the proceeds from a hairdressing salon to pay for flying lessons, and then she flew from Texas to Australia around the world. So she's my inspiration.
Oh my God, that's a fantastic story. That sounds really, really good. So, so if somebody's interested in learning to fly, what do they need to consider then?
Have the time, the motivation, and the money.
Time, motivation, money. Sounds like a lot of things in life. Great. And how do we get hold of you? Have you got a website or anything?
The website is londonairsports.com, and I'm based here at Damyns Hall. It seems I'm here 9 days a week, so come here anytime to contact me.
Fantastic. And the aircraft, I was out this morning, I saw some of your aircraft operating. They look very interesting. They're Pipistrels, yeah?
They're Pipistrel aircraft made in Slovenia. And next year we should have the electric aircraft to train on.
Now that sounds very interesting. I'd like to come back and see that. Excellent. So how far have you got to go now with your training, Rebecca?
I've still got quite a way to go, but the flight to Slovenia was very intense on navigation. I would highly recommend doing the tour format.
Oh, lovely. Sounds great. Well, I'm going to wish you both a happy Christmas. And, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'll get that around the right way. And I look forward to coming back and seeing your electric aircraft next year. Thank you.
Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And if you've got any information or stories you want to share with us, please do get in touch.